Hi everybody, welcome to the Rubin Report. I'm Dave Rubin. We have a crazy breaking news, jam-packed edition of the show today. There is so much stuff going on in the world right now. You know, some weeks, not that much going on. We got to pull a story out of our butts. Not this week. There is just a ton going on. Things are changing as we speak. So we're going to get right to it. I've got two great guests with me. I've got Miss Jackie Geary and Miss Vanessa Gomez, and there is so much to talk about, a lot of Egypt stuff, but we're going to start with Alec Baldwin. I have to do this story because of everything that I've been tweeting. So we all know basically what happened. He was at James Gandolfini's funeral. A reporter thought that his wife was tweeting during the funeral, which actually turned out not to be true. And then Alec went on his latest Twitter tirade. Let's read him. All right, so from the bottom up in chronological order, I want all my followers and beyond to straighten out this fucking little bitch, George Stark. George Stark was the writer who tweeted that his wife was tweeting. My wife and I attend a funeral to pay our respects to an old friend, and some toxic Brit writes this fucking trash. I'd put my foot up your fucking ass, George Stark, but I'm sure you dig it too much. I'm gonna find you, George Stark, you toxic little queen, and I'm gonna fuck you up. Truly a lovely, lovely fella. All right, so before we get into this, I just want to say I'm a comedian, I'm a talk show host. I believe in free speech. You can do whatever you want. You can say whatever you want, short of yelling fire in a movie theater and basically threatening violence, which he pretty much did. So I would always veer on the side of free speech. So I don't necessarily think that that's what this is about. Ladies, where does this loon, like, how are you so rich and entitled and get whatever you want all the time and still so angry? Jackie.
Oh, I have no idea. It's so depressing and horrible. And I love him. Why does he make it so hard for us to love him?
Well, that's
it's impossible.
Isn't that
he's
the
a
irony?
Genius.
Yeah.
Comedically and evil and sick and sad and twisted as a
Right.
human. Like, keep it together, man.
Yeah.
How do you? I have so much trouble every time I read it. Look, like the sticking the foot up the ass, and that's
And
where
liking it.
Right.
that's where it crosses it for me. I can't let that go. That's some rage-filled hate right there.
Is that the part that makes it homophobic to you? Because the toxic queen part, I could see you could work your way out of it.
And he tried to, by
and
the
he
way.
tried to.
He tried to say he was referring,
Right.
he could refer to anybody as a queen, just somebody thinks that they're better than somebody or
So
whatever.
we'll get to his apology in a second, but is the put the foot up your ass and enjoy it, is that the part that makes it more homophobic?
I mean, look, I think this isn't the first time that he's gone on a tirade. I mean, this is not news at 11. We know that Alec is capable of doing this. But yes, I definitely think that was the tweet that broke, the camel's back. It's like it was so unnecessary, and it was visual. I mean, that's part of it. You have a picture in your head, and yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that was the tweet that was really what put over the edge. I think if he had just tweeted maybe the other things, like you said, I'm gonna F you up, or that's trash, it's not true what he said. I mean, obviously he's defending his pregnant wife, so I wouldn't say that people would think it's uncommon or unfair to, defend his wife, but definitely he went way over the line.
All right, so let's look at his apology and then we'll jump back in. So here's what he said. The idea of me calling this guy a queen and that being something that people thought is homophobic, a queen to me has different meaning. It's somebody who's just above. It doesn't have any necessarily sexual connotations. I know women that act queenie, I know men that are straight that act queenie, and I know gay men that act queenie. It doesn't have to be a definite sexual connotation or a homophobic connotation. To me, those are people who think that rules don't apply to them. This guy could blatantly lie about my wife on the internet, and there are just no rules that apply to him, but that's outrageous to me. Now, the irony of this is that Alec Baldwin is the one that thinks no rules apply to him. Remember the phone on the plane and that whole thing? So even in that apology, he really didn't address what we're all agreeing is the more egregious comment and the threat of violence, right?
It's just stop talking. Stop talking. You've done enough. Stop talking. Don't try to invent your own dictionary for what words mean in our society. Well, I think the term dick really just refers to people. No.
It's short for Richard. What can
short
I say?
for Richard,
Listen, it's
and
just
that's how I see the word. Shut up. Stop talking. That's not an apology.
Yeah. Do you guys think that he's getting off on this because He's a well-known liberal activist. He's obviously left-wing. The media loves him. Left-wing media loves him, blah, blah, blah. And as Hillary Rosen, a former CNN correspondent, said, he gives money to the right causes. She was actually defending him, and I know her. I've had her on my old SiriusXM show, and I was sort of shocked at what she was saying, because basically she was saying, look, he gives money to gay causes, so let him say whatever he wants. Is that acceptable?
No, absolutely not acceptable. Incidentally, I don't think he wrote that apology. That's like two different people for one. So let's just start there. Like, that was completely eloquent and different than the person who was writing the tweets. But yeah, I think that would be maybe a good excuse that he's thinking, oh, well, I give money, so I have the right to do, it doesn't matter whether you give money or whether you, it doesn't mean it's okay for him to have said what he said. It just doesn't.
Yeah. Now, relating this to everything that's going on with Paula Deen, I know they're not exactly the same thing, but we have two public figures who are both being, one attacked and one let go by things that they said, one racial, one homophobic. Is the thing with Paula Deen, is this purely because she's a Southern woman? So there's this, again, this is sort of the left-wing media or the mainstream media. They can easily attack a woman from the South when it's related to a racial thing, but it's a lot dicier to attack sort of one of their own about even something gay, despite all the good gay stuff that's gone on lately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where it gets so tricky, is because even myself, just as a human, loving Alec Baldwin as an actor and all of the work he has done, it's so hard for me to be angry at him when I read it again. It helps, but somebody had pointed out if he was a conservative,
right,
and hadn't given to all these causes and was a different person, it would be outrageous and people would be furious.
Right. If Sean Hannity had said this, I'm pretty sure there would be riots outside of Fox News. Not that I ever want to defend Sean Hannity, which shows you how stupid.
I know. It's so tricky.
Yeah.
It's so tricky.
Well, the other thing about it, I think, too, is that Paula Deen is herself. She plays herself. She's not an actor like Alec Baldwin is. We don't see her in any other way like we do Alec Baldwin. We think of him and we think of the great roles, how funny he is, all the shows he's been on, all of that stuff. So I think that has a little bit to do with it. And absolutely, the fact that he is, liberal. Obviously, I don't think that he's homophobic. I really don't genuinely, as a person. Just if you ask my opinion.
So where does that come from? Where does that imagery come from?
I think that he obviously the guy has anger management issues, to say the least. And I think that when he gets angry, he obviously doesn't think before he speaks. I mean, we saw that. Look at the rage that he did towards his own daughter. Do you know what I mean?
With
so if that was okay to do that and attack his own daughter, I mean, anybody's game. And so I'm not saying it's, obviously I'm not condoning it or anything like that, but I think he just has anger management issues and he says things out of anger that maybe aren't rooted in, I think he loves his daughter, obviously, but you hear that voicemail and you would think different. Yeah. So, I don't know, but I really would love if his sponsors came out and said something.
All right, so we'll get to Capital One in a second, but before that, do you think that that this is really about a word? Because Paula Deen said the N-word, which we universally know, you shouldn't say, you shouldn't think, that whole thing. Now, he didn't say faggot, which is now becoming the new F word. Right. But do you think if he had said faggot, that then would have at least coalesced all the gay groups and glad not to have immediately exonerated him if he had actually said the word? Do you think that might have been, instead it was this imagery but not a word? Are we so dumb that...
Yeah, it's kind of messed up that in not using the word, he kind of skated by a little bit, even though what he had texted about the foot is so rage-filled.
Right.
So rage-filled and so much worse. But yeah, somehow he was able to skirt around it in word choices. I don't know how.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel two ways about it. I feel, on one sense, yes, that's obviously a hot button word. It's a trigger word. If he would have used it, I think people would have come out a lot stronger. But the other thing is, we have to remember is that Paula Deen, she sort of attacked a community of people. It wasn't one person. It wasn't in defense because she was provoked or anything like that. I think the difference is Alec Baldwin, though he messed up, he was provoked. This person did write something that was extremely slanderous and not okay about his wife. And is there anything more disrespectful than that, to say that you were at a funeral and we're uplifting or tweeted about smoothies or whatever it is they said.
And it turned out not to be true.
And it turned out not to be true. So I think people also take that into consideration. Like, Paula Deen was using these racial slurs because she wanted to throw a plantation party. I mean, Let's, you know, so I think it's that. And also, unfortunately, and I know that I'm not going to be the good guy on the panel to say it, but I think unfortunately we're still in a nation that people are more okay with gay slurs than they are racial slurs. And I wish that weren't the case, but I feel like we still are on that.
Right.
We're still on that balance.
And that's the irony of the whole thing, because we had all this great stuff happen with DOMA, and then this is happening at the exact same time, which shows you that everything is a long process. But okay, I want to talk about Capital One just to close this thing. So Alec Baldwin, you know he does those over-the-top commercials with Capital One. Capital One has not issued a statement. They've actually ignored dozens of my personal tweets, and they've ignored thousands and thousands of other people's tweets and emails and comments. And I know people from Forbes magazine and others have been trying to reach out to them to comment, but they've ignored everybody, which may beat to Vanessa's point that you still can say things about gay people and companies don't have to do anything. I actually called Capital One a couple times. They hung up on me twice. The third time, the rep said that he was on vacation, so he didn't know what was going on and that they couldn't get me in touch with anyone else. So I have paid off the tiny bit that I have left on my Capital One credit card and will no longer be using it. And
Good for you.
little something, right? It's a little,
absolutely.
my $25 credit limit with you people.
Our numbers.
Hello, Discover card. I'm on my way. But okay, so then final thought on this. Do you think it's just ridiculous that Capital One doesn't have to just, all I wanted them to, I didn't want them to fire him. I don't think people should be, but that they don't have to say anything. They haven't felt any pressure to say anything. Is that a bigger problem here than almost the
It's
initial
as though
hit?
they're not recognizing that he did anything wrong. I think that's maybe what bothers you, that they should come out and say either one way or the other. We're going to support him, or stand by him, or we're going to fire him, whatever, but they need to say something because something was done wrong. And for them not saying it.
She loses all her cookbooks, the TV show.
Everything, except for her magazine, I think.
And I think it is societal. I think if it was 1962 and somebody used the N-word like Paula Deen, nobody would comment on it either, and everybody would be like, well, okay, you know, and just you know,
it under the rug.
And I think hopefully in 40 years, nobody will be able to get away with anything like that again.
I think a perfect ending to a bizarre topic. All right, so now we are going to move on to some breaking news, because Egypt, right this very second, within the last 20 minutes, it was announced that the military coup is underway. Mohammed Morsi, who was the Muslim Brotherhood candidate, president, who was elected democratically after Mubarak, was let go after 30 years. He is now on his way out. So any of this could change within the hour that it takes for us to post this. There's so many ways we can start with this thing, and it's a really, really big topic that they've basically been ignoring in the news. But so first, how should Americans even feel about this? Because there's a feeling in America, I think, that we just should have nothing to do with the world anymore. Like, we got so many problems at home that we can't worry about this. Is that a bad route to take for America?
I feel like we have to worry to some degree, but it's so tricky, and I think Obama has had such a tough time knowing how much to say, how much to do, and I think he did, sort of miss. He came in a little late in that when the Muslim Brotherhood started, after they came into power, doing all these things that were not exactly kosher.
Right, women's rights out the window,
They weren't, he wasn't speaking up enough in time, but then there is the whole debate. This is not our country. These are not our people. Why do we as Americans say, well, we are in charge of everything and we're sort of big brother and we always get to have a say? And
ironically, not our country. We gave the Muslim Brotherhood $1.3 billion last month. I'm pretty sure perhaps it could have been used for better funds. What do you think? What do you think America is should our involvement be nothing? Are we supposed to take a side? What side are we on? Do you even know that?
You know what? I think we're on our own side, as usual. I think that we're always involved in any international, affairs or disputes or anything. I think that's kind of what we're known for, why we're loved and why we're hated, to be quite honest. We're always sticking our nose in someone else's. We're the Wendy Williams of the world, sticking our nose in someone else's business. How you doing, Wendy? No, but seriously, it's a hard line to walk, like you said. It's a hard balance. You don't want to be over-involved. You don't want to be under-involved. Obviously, we care what's going on there, and we have a completely different democracy. Even after they brought in this new electoral votes, all that, it still turned out to be the same ending. Unfortunately, these people took a chance. They thought that they were changing the Constitution. They thought they were changing the way, the oppression, all of that. And as it turned out, they had a guy that was worse than the last guy they just kicked out.
Right, so is all of that just part of democracy's growing pains? Because it seems to me they had Mubarak for 30 years. Nobody really liked him. They weren't really free. But at least he kept some sort of order, then they've had democracy, and that's the irony.
Yes.
It's like, what are we supposed to do now?
Right.
Because they did democratically elect this guy, and Obama said a lot of nice things about this guy.
And military coups are not comfortable things for Americans to really wrap their heads around, I think, and rightly so.
Yeah.
You know, it's, yes, the Egyptians have every right to be angry and to be protesting, and this man should not be in office, and yet, military coups, that's some intense stuff.
Right, is there any, that's the thing, it's like no matter what happens, so you go from a dictator to a democratically elected guy who's no good to now a military coup, we have no reason, is the military suddenly going to be like, all right, women's rights for everybody and gay rights
We're
and
going to be super fair.
I mean, listen, keep in mind, I feel like they took one giant step forward and then like 10 steps back, because typically Egypt has always been ruled either by an old military commander, someone, you know, something to do with the military. This is sort of the first time, and they thought, oh my God, this is great. We're finally, you know, gonna have some freedoms and things like that. And I think that this guy, you know, it was bait and switch, to be honest. I mean, if I'm gonna put this in a funny metaphor, it's like, you know, you're dating a girl and she's hot, she's got long hair, she's got the lashes and the nails, and then you take her home and you wake up the next morning and she's bald and
she's crazy.
You know, it's just like, wait a minute, like who is, you know, misrepresentation. So yeah, you know, I think that right now the role that we're taking, we're covering it. We have our opinions on it. Obviously, they're at the end of the day, it's their land, and they're going to do what they want to do.
I'm with you on this crazy metaphor though, because I was watching a YouTube clip from last year with Christiane Amanpour from CNN interviewing Morsi, and he's going on and on about how much he loves democracy and freedom and women's rights and kind of.
Love you, Morsi.
Yeah, great guy.
Live.
That's what I mean. Obviously, it was totally bait and switch, and I mean, we should be calling this catfish. You know, it's like he's putting himself as one thing. You show up and you're like, where's the person that I, whatever.
Not here.
So obviously he had an agenda. He's part of the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, that is pretty, you know, cut and dry, and unfortunately.
They were banned under Mubarak. Again, not defending Mubarak, but this was a group that was banned for being so extreme under him. So
better the devil you know than the devil you don't, they say.
I think
and
we're
I
finding
think
that
we're finding that out.
All right, so last point on this. Is there some, every time when I'm watching this now, I keep thinking this is like watching a reality TV version of the 10 Commandments. That's what this feels like to me. Doesn't it? I feel like Charlton Heston's going to walk out and go, let my people go. Yeah. Everywhere. You like that one?
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But is that how, but do we need those things? Do we need those things to frame it? Like, I feel like that's a simple way to frame it. You know what I mean? Like, there's this group of people, like everyone watched the 10 Commandments. There's this group of people that wants to be free, and Pharaoh, Morsi's not letting them be free, and now all hell's about to break loose.
Yeah, it's always easier to be like, let the people speak and be free, and absolutely, and that's where my heart is, and I think that's where
I think Americans' hearts, because we are, you know, we're free, and we're such
something like 14 million people are out there protesting, and 13 million voted Morsi in.
Right.
So, but at the same time, it's obviously so much more complex, and that's why.
I mean, it's the first time in history where the people are actually for the military, whereas before it was like they were against it. Now they're like, hey, we're all in the same thing, you know, jumping on tanks. But yeah, I think it's unfolding as we speak, and we'll see how it goes. And you know, hopefully it'll be good and it turns out well for the people.
Stop talking and go watch TV.
All right. Well, I think we gave you as insightful, if not more, than anything you're going to see on CNN all week, and that brings me to the next topic, because I've been just beyond over the top disappointed, and I guess I shouldn't even be shocked at this point with CNN's coverage of this whole thing. One of the oldest civilizations in the world is having the biggest protest in human history, and instead CNN is showing wall to wall, or as they call it, gavel to gavel. That's what Ashley Banfield said, coverage of the George Zimmerman trial. Now, I'm not diminishing the importance of the George Zimmerman trial. It is very important. There are all kinds of racial issues we still have to deal with this country. But showing any trial, just hours of trial minutia, is just pure drivel, especially when important things are going on. Should I just get off my thing with CNN? I have a thing where I want them to be good because Fox is awful one way, MSNBC is awful the other way. So I want, and that's why I love working here at the Young Turks, because we're doing that online. But I still want there to be I want there to be someone giving us actual news. Am I just a crazy dreamer?
No, I think CNN is sadly pandering to the masses in the sense of what we were just discussing. I don't think America knows what to think about Egypt. I think they're a little scared and don't really know what to think or say or do about it, so it's so much easier to just zone out to the Zimmermans. Right. And it's disappointing.
Yeah.
It's really disappointing.
But shouldn't CNN be the one that's showing it to us so that we learn?
Yes, they should.
I mean, look, I'm going to say something that's not going to go over well. It's going to go over like a fart in church, to be honest. But
comments below, by the way,
the
guys.
truth is, I say it like I mean it. I don't think Americans, first of all, names are so much harder to pronounce. Can I just say, it's sad that we don't care as much as that. We're so obsessed with these trials. I mean, O.J. Simpson, Casey Anthony, Jodi Arias, Amanda Knox. Now this is the new George Zimmerman. We're fixated on these trials, and it's happening on our own shores. It's not something that's over there. And the other thing is, I think that we can. Everyone had a verdict, I think, before the trial even begun. So everyone is just looking to have their verdict backed up by the evidence, by the witnesses, by all of that. Yeah. It's great water cooler talk. It's easier to talk about that. And you can relate because ultimately we can put ourselves in that shoe. What would you have done if you had seen that? We can't really put ourselves in the shoes of the Egyptians because we don't live like that. That's not our reality.
Well, interesting. I want to show just an image of CNN, what they've been doing. So they're showing Zimmerman all the time, and sometimes they're Skyping people in that box on the left, and they're showing the trial. And Egypt is getting a tiny muted picture-in-picture box live protest bill in Egypt. It's actually changed at some point today. It was watching now, which is bizarre because it's like them saying, well, we're watching what you really should be watching, but we're not going to have you people watching it. I mean,
ratings. People want to see Zimmerman.
But do people do that? My question is this: do people really? I think we just keep feeding them crap, and they just keep ingesting it. Do they really want to see these trials? Do you want to see these trials?
I don't really want to see these trials, but I found it all over the television last night, and since it's everywhere, you get sucked in and you start watching, and you would expect more from CNN. Sadly, you would Nancy Grace, sure, all day long, wall to wall, but not CNN. When so much is happening in Egypt, it would be different if nothing was going on this week at all. But I think since it's forced down our throats, then we go, oh, interesting. Well, maybe those lacerations aren't, conducive with, being.
Right. Is there anything more irrelevant, really, than hour after hour of trial coverage? Again, I'm not diminishing the importance of the trial, but the minutia of what goes on in a trial and the back and forth drivel and the questioning and that we know that whatever gets decided at the end probably has nothing to do with the truth. It has only to do with who manipulated it better. Like, can you think of anything that would be more irrelevant for 5 hours in a row to show than a trial? What would be more drivelous?
Watching paint dry? I don't know. I think, like I said, I think part of it is it's driven down our throats. I think part of it is that's what we want. We are responding to them, to these stories by giving our ratings and tuning in, and that's the problem. They wouldn't be doing this. There would be no supply without demand. Do you know what I mean?
It's a chicken and egg situation.
Exactly.
I think,
it's drama. People love drama. If they're
drama.
not soap operas are tanking, so let's watch.
Right. Well, interestingly, yesterday, I was on Twitter going crazy about this, and I tweeted at CNN's Jake Tapper, who was on air at the time, and I said, Jake, do you, on your own show that has your name on it, do you even decide what story goes first? Because they did literally 12 minutes of Zimmerman, and then they did about a minute on Egypt. And he tweeted at me during the commercial break, and he said, it depends what's happening live, which I thought was bizarre because
that's happening live.
There are a million people, and I like Jake, but it was an odd response. Anyway, this whole Egypt thing is going to keep going for a long, long time, and hopefully right now, if you were to turn on any of the networks, they're doing a better job, and I hope that they will continue to do so. All right, so this next story, this is just beyond disturbing, and before we even get to it, we're going to show some video in a second that is extremely, extremely graphic. So if you want to pause or look away for a little bit or something. So you probably heard about this already because this video is going viral. A man in Hawthorne, California, there was a police incident and a bunch of people were outside videotaping some cop cars and the police officers. And well, now we're going to show it, but really it is quite graphic. So let's take a look.
What is he doing? He just went to the ground. He didn't throw that to the ground.
Oh, he just got handcuffed like that. He didn't even care. Yeah, I like the dog. The dog wants to go home. Imagine the dog comes out. Like the dog is barking. I'll let the dog out. I'll let the dog out. Let the dog out now.
Oh shit, the dog.
And the dog. Like he's trying to jump out too. Look. jump out. Jump out. Let it jump out.
Oh shit.
Hey, watch it! Watch it!
Hey, that dog. Hey, that dog.
Get back, dude. Get back, dude. You gonna miss. Shot.
Shot the dime.
Okay, that does not get easier to watch, no matter how many times I've watched it at this point. All right, so it's unclear exactly why the man was being arrested. It's not illegal to videotape police officers while there's an incident. It seemed bizarre that they immediately handcuffed him just like that. And then the guy had the dog out. He actually put the dog in the car. The dog jumped out of the window, so it wasn't like he was trying to sick the dog on the cops. And then, as you saw, the cop shot the dog several times. Okay. There's so many levels with this story involving so many things. So I'm just gonna, where do you want to start with this one, Vanessa?
I mean, where do we start? If you see earlier in the video, first of all, I don't even know why the man was arrested. He was
right, so
just
that's unclear.
right.
About that.
It's supposed to be about he wouldn't turn off the radio. He had
Being a
the music
nuisance
blaring,
at best.
okay.
and
At
he
best.
wouldn't turn down the music. That's supposedly what it was, but he did turn it off when he put the dog in the car, and they just did walk right up to him
And immediately
And-
arrest him.
Okay, so we're already off
Right.
to a bit of a sketchy start.
I mean, look, I think if you, unfortunately, I did see the video a few times, and I really paid close attention to the dog's behavior.
Yeah.
Yes, he responded as any dog, by the way. My dog would respond the exact same way if I've got 5-6 people in all black, you know, manhandling me, doesn't
Yeah.
know the situation. The owner's handcuffed, so there's no way for him to, you know, tell the dog to calm down or grab the dog. You can see him trying to command the dog and tell, you know, the dog obviously doesn't know English, so he's not going to respond to just the owner's commands. And what I want to know is, you know, look, I love police. I'm not like anti, you know, I think they're amazing. I think they put their life on the line to protect and serve. So let me just put that out there right now. But in my personal opinion as a citizen, I think that deadly force should be the last resort. And I feel like in this video, it was the first resort.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that if indeed this officer was threatened, you know, physically, or felt like he was physically at risk, then there were a lot of other options that should have happened, that could have happened before ultimately going to shooting.
Right.
Why couldn't he have pepper sprayed the dog? Why couldn't he have tried to contain the dog, even with his leg, even with, I mean, there's 5-6 officers. If he were there by himself arresting somebody just with the dog, and the dog was, you know, that's a different circumstance, but it wasn't. There were like 6 cop cars, a SWAT car. I mean, I'm ready for Will Smith to walk out of the house with the AK, like it looked like a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about having backup. So
Right, so I'm with you on this because there are many other options, and it's very easy for us all to always gang up on the police. And if you look at all the comments on YouTube, yes, everyone's immediately attacking the police. There clearly was some level of threat, but are you on board this idea that there were other options available, or that it just escalated too quickly, that there wasn't even a moment of really trying to corral the dog in any other way? And should a cop have to deal with that, or did he, you know?
I mean, I heard an account of it before I watched the video, and I'm glad, as horrible as it is, that I watched the video, because it does escalate quickly, and the dog isn't at fault, then the owner isn't at fault. Of course, he left the windows down because it was 1,000,000 degrees on Sunday, and I can see the officer got scared and reacted really stupidly, and it's so upsetting. It comes down to pepper spray something. Do something else other than shoot it 4 times.
Yeah, and does this also show how humans, you know, look, it seems to me that there was some racial element going on there, because the man himself seemed to be egging on the police a little bit in the way he had a little bounce in his step as he was videotaping them, and then they were walking close, and there seemed to be just some sort of like he's dealt with police in this element before, but then look who pays at the end of the day. It was the innocent animal. And maybe the cop will now pay.
I mean, look, if you take a really close look at the video, as unfortunately I did, the dog retreats many times. I mean, he'll start to go, but then he'll come up back on the curb. And if you see right before he was shot, the cop actually lunged towards the dog before he went up to finally try and bite him. And I think that's not okay, you know? So, like I said, deadly force should be, in my opinion, the last resort. And I feel like in this situation, it was the first resort. And I think that it was a bad judgment in his, you know, in that moment. I don't know if that's just under training. I don't know if it's just maybe this guy's trigger happy, abuse of power. I mean, 4 times to shoot an animal. You know, maybe even if he just shot him once as like a reaction, or he could say, I didn't even realize what happened, but 4 times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really just senseless.
Do you also think it's bizarre that everyone knows they're being, look, they went into this knowing that they were being recorded already because the guy was recording them. Does that make it even weirder that these things can still happen when everyone knows they're being recorded all the time?
Yeah, you would think they would dial it down or have some sense of this. Apparently this man showed up and started videotaping because he'd had civil rights violations by the police in Hawthorne in the past. There was even something I heard that maybe it was the same officer that had roughed him up in the past.
Yeah, there's a couple of conflicting things.
Who knows? But you would think then, especially if these officers recognize this guy and it's being videotaped by so many people, that there would be some sense of decorum.
Yeah.
Don't shoot a dog.
Yeah.
Don't shoot a dog.
All right. Well, I mean, I think clearly we're all on the same page here, and it is not an easy situation.
No, it's not.
And I certainly have empathy for the officer too, because it's a bad situation he got put in. But I guess this would be a good time to jump on my soapbox and tell you, adopt a dog instead of buying a dog. We are all dog adopters here, we discovered before the show, and there are so many great dogs that are ready to be adopted, and the mills are killing. It's a whole other thing. We'll do that on another show. But all right, let's leave it there. All right, next up, it was a huge week for the Supreme Court and the gays, as we call them now. DOMA was struck down. Prop 8 is going back to the states. So a lot of good stuff happened for marriage equality. And it got me thinking about how television and media influences our ability to change and how it affects society. And then it had me thinking particularly about one clip from my favorite all-time show, The Golden Girls, about marriage equality. This is a Golden Girls clip. I believe this is season 7, 1992. Take a look.
Blanche, I've been thinking about Clayton and Doug, and I have a question.
What?
Why do men have nipples?
I have no idea.
You think it's because God has a sense of humor and isn't as uptight as the rest of us?
It's easier for you to say that, Sophia. It's not your brother who's getting married to a man. Oh, look, I can accept the fact that he's gay, but why does he have to slip a ring on this guy's finger so the whole world will know?
Why did you marry George?
We loved each other. We wanted to make a lifetime commitment, wanted everybody to know.
That's what Doug and Clayton want, too. Everyone wants someone to grow old with, and shouldn't everyone have that chance?
Sophia, I think I see what you're getting at.
I don't think you do. Blanche, will you marry me?
Thank you, Sophia. I need to go talk to them.
Fine, but I'll need an answer. I'm not going to wait for you forever.
All right, I love that clip for so many reasons. First off, funny, and also it was telling truth. And again, this is 20 some odd years ago, and they were telling, and this was in Florida. Gay marriage certainly wasn't legal 22 years ago in Florida. It's not legal now. So I think this brings us to an interesting topic, which is how much does this stuff actually transcend, make its way into reality? Because on one hand, you could look at this and go, well, that's amazing they did that 22 years ago. But it still took 22 years to get this far. So should we be inspired by these things that come out of pop culture and television?
I think so. I think it's an important part of the process. I think when we fall in love with characters and we feel like they're our own family, our own friends, then after that investment, when we see, we're so much more likely to hear what they have to say when it's as funny and wonderful as that. Yeah. And I think so much did lead up to it. I think Will and Grace played a big role, in the early 2000s. I think there were a lot of shows. The more it was represented on our television sets, the more I think the country was able to empathize and understand and get on board. And I think it's a kind of a nice thing for, the comedy and the world.
It's good for the comedy.
It's good for the comedy.
I mean, listen, obviously, I think it was fantastic. It talked about a topic that wasn't really talked about on television. This is before Will and Grace, before Modern Family or New Normal or any of these shows were in our living rooms where we were...
New Normal already canceled.
Right, well, but at least there was positive, gay role models on television that people could, really get behind. And I love that the Sophia, who is the oldest, Sicily, picture it, 1910, it's like she's educating the younger generation. If anything, you would think she would be the one that needed to be, educated. So I love that. But yeah, it's like you said, I mean, It's anytime that we see other people doing anything, having any opinion, it always has an effect on you, because it makes you think, well, what would I do? Or what would I, see? Or what would I think?
Well, I think that, okay, so I'm with you guys 100% so far, and stuff like that has a huge, powerful, impactful, societal commentary. However, is this a bit of a slippery slope? Because like when all these politicians jump on TV and they always say, well, there's too much gun violence in TV and in video games, and that's why people are shooting each other. So does it run both ways, that we get good images that are change us for the good, but bad images that change us for bad? I'm not a personal believer that video games cause violence, because otherwise I'd be an Italian plumber eating mushrooms and jumping on turtles. But you know what I mean? Like, does it go both ways? If the good stuff is good for us, is the bad stuff equally as bad?
I think it's easy to say that. Yeah, absolutely. You got to take, your sugar with your salt. And if you're going to stand on one side, you kind of got to stand on it, for both sides. But I think part of it, and this is the point that I totally completely was in our case.
I was just killing time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Is I think in 1992, I think there were still a lot of people who hadn't come out yet, and so I think there was a lot of areas of the world, but certainly even just our nation, where people didn't really know that many gay people. Not that they maybe didn't know that they were gay, or maybe it wasn't accepted. And so showing it on television is like showing them, is like they know somebody. Oh, I know Cam. Even if in their personal life they don't know somebody, who's gay or who's out. And they're like, oh, that's so cool. And that builds, tolerance and all of that. But you're right. I think environment has a little bit to do with why people do things, absolutely. I mean, this guy that went in, like he was the Joker in Batman and shot up do I think that he would have gone that route if he hadn't seen The Dark Knight? I don't know. He probably had a screw loose to begin with.
Right, and might have just done it a different way without a Joker mask or something like that.
But to say that it has no influence, no, I have to say that I really do think it does have an influence. But I think you have to be smart enough to be like, okay, this is a game, this is a movie, this is not real, or whatever it is. And hopefully when it's something positive, like, tolerance, people are like, this is cool.
Yeah. Did you guys have any shows that affected you in any specific way? Anything that maybe empowered you as women or as comic personalities or whatever it might be?
I mean, Punky Brewster, listen, I was mix matching my socks every day because of Punky. No, seriously. Absolutely.
No, the very special episodes of Blossom, and now we're going to address, I don't know if any of them spoke to me personally, but it was, as a kid, you're hearing about all these things that you are maybe sheltered from and don't know about, and therefore are enlightened by that very special episode.
Yeah, I remember a very special episode of Growing Pains when they go to, Kirk Cameron, Mike Seaver goes to a party with Boner. I don't know how they named that kid Boner. That was in a meeting. We're gonna name this guy Boner. But and Boner goes off and does coke with a bunch of other kids, and Mike doesn't. And they made it a very special, and that stuff does stick with you as a kid, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
Absolutely, and that's a lot easier way to do it than just like on the news or somebody like pushing it down your throat. It's like they kind of put it in entertainment and make it softer, and especially with Golden Girls. I mean, that was a sitcom. They made it funny. Yeah. They made it lighthearted. Yeah. It wasn't something that was like tragic or hushed or anything like that. So kudos to them, I think.
Yay for the girls.
Yay for the girls.
Yay for the Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. I had to say it legally once in this segment. All right, one more for you. Prescription drug use is off the charts, bonkers right now. 70% of Americans are on prescription drugs. Let's look at some numbers. Okay, 70%, as I said, are on at least one, so many of them are on more than that, and you have to take your Abilify to supplement your Wellbutrin and blah, blah, blah. That's a 50% increase from 2007 to 2010, so it's probably higher than that right now. 50% of Americans are on at least 2 prescription drugs, and 20% of Americans are on 5 or more prescription drugs. 20% are on 5 or more prescription drugs. I'm not going to ask either one of you specifically how many prescription drugs you are taking. These numbers seem horrific to me. Like, this is maybe a bigger problem that we have in America than anything else at the moment.
And to me, it's so obvious where it's coming from. It's the commercialization of it. I mean, there really wasn't a way. They finally figured out how to put them on television with the smiley faces and the dogs jumping and the happiness. And people are like, ooh, great. The requests, people are going into their doctors saying, hey, I saw a commercial for this. I would like it, please.
Right, there was a little cloud cartoon chasing me.
Yes,
and I
see the cloud. I have the cloud. It makes no, so that's and they. I think it's so funny that they don't air those commercials on radio. There's no drug commercials on radio because they don't work because there are no happy faces.
That's an interesting point. So if you're in your car,
Yes.
listening to it, you're still seeing trees
Yes.
or people. So your
Yes.
brain. But if you see a depressing cloud,
Right. Oh,
scary. I never thought of that.
Creepy.
What do you think of it?
I think a lot has to do with that. I also think in the study it says that a lot of them are antidepressants, and I think the economy had a huge hand in that. People lost their homes, people lost their jobs, people lost their lifestyle, they lost their nest egg, their retirement. So even ordinary people that maybe would not have been depressed or don't have depression in their family or whatever it is are now finding themselves down in the dumps because of what has happened.
But isn't that just part of life? That 10 years ago or 20 years ago, certainly that was just part of life. And now because of the marketing machine, it's like, oh, I'm a little depressed, like I lost my job, I need a pill.
It's more socially acceptable now. I think before being depressed was like, everyone was quiet and didn't want to admit it, and it was like this stigma that was on it. And I think now people are like, hey, I need help, I need some, whatever. Or we're in this society of the internet where we want immediate gratification. We're like push button, get a result, So I think instead of, like you said, like just getting over it or maybe doing some meditation or some therapy, people are like, give me a pill, give me a pill. What's gonna fix it? I don't want to go. People know how to lose weight. They know how to work out. They know what they should and shouldn't be eating. You don't need a book to tell you that 6 pieces of cake before you go to sleep is probably not a good idea. But either way, they want You heard it here first. Either way, they want a pill that's going, quick trim or whatever it is that's going to fix them right away. So I think it's the same thing. And I think, with the internet, they're going on there and they're not only seeing these commercials, but I diagnose myself all the time. I'm on WebMD. I'm like, I have a sneezy, cough
It's a tumor.
Right, exactly. And you wait for the word cancer to come up. You're like, oh, sweet.
Every time I go on WebMD, it makes me think of that episode of The Simpsons when Mr. Burns goes to the clinic and they tell him that he has absolutely every disease known to man, but they're in perfect balance so that he can't get sick. And that's what I feel like when I'm on there. I'm like, I have everything.
Right.
Hysterical pregnancy, everything.
Exactly.
Do you guys think that that in these commercials, because I do think that's the root of this whole thing, that they should have to show you the side effects, not just list them, because literally about 40% of the commercials are saying diarrhea, nausea, possible suicide, death, blah, blah. But they never show that. Instead, it's a guy in a field and he's running and someone has their kids and he's doing all this amazing stuff. But if they actually showed you puking on the toilet and hanging yourself and maybe jumping over, do you think that might?
Let's shoot that commercial. Let's do that.
Yeah, Funny or Die, people. You can have that idea for free.
Yes, absolutely. Because they're saying may cause prostate cancer as the man is smiling and lovingly at his spouse. Like, give me a break.
Sexual dysfunction. Like, you won't be able to get, these people, they take Viagra to get a boner, then they get depressed, now they can't get a boner, then they take Cialis because they need a longer boner.
Now the cream, the testosterone cream, where if you accidentally touch your wife and with the cream on your hands, she will grow a beard, so call your doctor.
Or Propecia, the one that'll put hair on your head, but if your wife touches it, it'll kill the unborn baby.
Incidentally, this is why people are on 5 or more prescription drugs, is because they take one, and the side effects of this one, they need 3 others, and the side effects of those, they need, and it's a never-ending train.
You know what I was thinking, sidebar to this, so I was, I don't really like to fly, and I went to a psychiatrist to get Xanax to fly, and that was all I wanted. He told me that I have time shift disorder.
What?
And that there was a new pill that he wanted me to take, and I kept saying to him, I swear to God this is true, and I kept saying to him, no, I just want Xanax, I just want to be able to pass out on the plane, that's it. He literally would not let me leave without a prescription for it, so I took the prescription, which I proceeded to throw away. But even his tape dispenser on his desk it had something, it wasn't Zoloft, but it was something. And I was thinking, I've bought weed in my day, I'm gonna whisper this, I bought weed. And the weed dealer has never been like, hey, you want crack too? You want some crack too? No, the weed dealer's like, all right, I'll sell you some weed. So doesn't that show you that the system is just...
drug corporations and the doctors who are, it's
payouts and the perks.
It's a mess. And what is time shift disorder? What is that?
Yeah.
There's, oh God, I don't,
You think Back to the Future, they would have mentioned it. Insane. If that was a real thing.
If he could get back to 1985.
He's fine. No, exactly. I think that has a lot to do with it. Look, doctors it's a business at the end of the day. Yes, they want to help you. Yes, hopefully they're there for the right reasons, other than, their Bentley. But when it comes down to it, they are a freelance person. They work for themselves, and these drug companies are making a ton of money, and they are giving them incentives, whether it be perks, gifts, money, checks, kickbacks, whatever it is. So obviously that doctor was getting something for, you know, for giving you that and making you go out and get that medication. I don't think he genuinely thought you needed it, because you would have just said, look.
Time shifted. That's not a disorder. That's a made-up imaginary thing. Time shift disorder. All right. Well, I hope that we've inspired you a little bit and not depressed you to have to go take the pills you're on or go get a whole set of new ones. I want to thank Jackie Geary, fake Jackie Geary on the Twitter, and Vanessa Gomez, that's Vanessa M. Gomez on Twitter. And July 4th, so get out there and have some fun and get away from your computer for a little bit and see what happens. Okay.